But the fifth essential knowledge, essential point, is called personification of. Imagine that we never knew what a record was, like, the 33 1/3 RPM records from 20 years ago or whatever. Imagine we didn't know what they were. And then one day a flying saucer flew overhead and a record fell out. And it crashed on the ground and broke into pieces. And so a scientist picked up one of those pieces and said, I'm going to figure out this piece. I'm going to understand this piece. I'm going to know everything about it before I'm done. So he started recording all the etchings on that little piece. And by the time he was done, he had a formula just filling the walls of his room. Big, all the detail. This etching goes, a 1/16 of a millimeter this way, and then a 32nd of a millimeter that way. Every single etching on the whole piece. And so by the time he was done, he said, okay, I know everything there is to know about this little piece. It's all right here on the wall. Now we know that you don't have any idea what's on that record until you hear the music. It's not about the physics or the mathematics. It's about the music. Think of another human being. When you think of another human being, you don't look at a human being and say, oh yeah, well, they have this organ and that organ and these cells and this physiology and the brain waves and all that, and so that's who they are. No. You think of the being. That's who they are. The personified correlate to that scientific structure. You see? Now, as I've said, if you understand what I'm about to say intellectually, it's okay. But you need to find it in yourself, and that's a process that we have to leave up to you. I'm just planting seeds here. You have to work with it yourself and find it within yourself. They asked Einstein, can you describe a sunset in terms of pure physics? He gave a beautiful answer. He said, yeah, you can. He said, but if you do, it loses its meaning. So now let's take a look at point number 3. The idea that pure consciousness becomes conscious of itself, duality is born, and a structure is created. And that structure is dynamic, and it's lively, and it's mathematically precise. But according to this point number 5, it loses its meaning until you're able to perceive the personified correlate. That's what gives it its meaning. You see? And typically, the word we assign to that is God. How incredible that the personified correlate, the self-interacting dynamic of pure consciousness that underlies all of existence, exists. And this might be a little next step, a little more advanced, is that what came first, the chicken or the egg, as they say? What birthed the what? Did the personified value birth the structure? Or did the structure birth the personified value? Or did they occur simultaneously? Or does one endure after the other is gone? See? Kind of like the idea when the physical body dies, is the persona still there? You see? Now, when you look at the structure of the self-interacting dynamic of pure consciousness. Highly complex, highly mathematical, geometric in nature. There are correlates to that are called yantras. The Sri yantra is a yantra. It's a geometric structure. It's a little pyramid. You've seen them. And the structure of that geometric little pyramid with all the little points and everything on it correlates with, maps onto, you see, the structure of the self-interacting dynamic of pure consciousness. And in the case of the Sri Yantra, then, it's Mother Divine. Now, out of that structure, it's a little bit like when you look at a kaleidoscope, you know, and you turn it around and you look at it, and you can see different patterns and different structures all superimposed in the kaleidoscope. Like that, within the structure of the self-interacting dynamic of pure consciousness, the structure of the Veda, if you will, the structure of the quantum mechanical realm, if you will. There are all these different patterns, structures you can pull out, and those are the different yantras. There's a Sri Yantra, Ganesh Yantra, Shiva Yantra, Kali Yantra, all these different yantras. And each of those yantras has a corresponding personified value. See? And that's where this notion of all these different gods comes from. Each structure has a corresponding personified nature, and each of those is a god, if you will. You see? But it's all the same one mega structure. So concurrently, there's one structure, one Maha structure, one big structure, one God, one unified field. And then there are all these other qualities, you could say, of it, all superimposed within its structure, that provide us with different, if you will, faces of God. You see? Now, we're going through these essential knowledge points quickly. We're already on number 5. And again, if you take it and you say, oh, okay, well, I get what he said, but I don't believe it, you've done nothing. Or even if you say, okay, I see what he said and I believe it, okay, that's fine, but I already knew there were gods, so who cares? You've done nothing. You've wasted your time, you wasted my time. But if you spend time and you reflect on this to the point where it starts to make sense inside of you, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's got to be right. Then you've done a great thing. You've done a great thing. The mathematical structure of the thing is so complex. Just like the mathematical structure of a physiology of a human being is so complex. When you relate, when you interact with another human being, you interact with a personified value. It's more direct. It's more immediate. It's more powerful. That's how you relate. That's how you connect. That's how you, lack of a better word, get leverage, Get a grip on it, Like that, Vedic cognitions are done in terms of personified quality. The quantum mechanical realm studies the same levels, same thing, but to analyze the movement of an electron from here to here requires formulas that fill the walls. Whereas if you speak in terms of personified quality, I adore Agni, flows Soma in a most sweet and exhilarating stream, Huge volumes of knowledge can be contained in just a few sentences. And so we talked about before the pujas and the havans and all, the language that's used is the language of the personified value. That's the language that has power. That's the language of nature. That's the language of the unified field. But again, we can't allow superstition to creep in. We can't allow this knowledge to be compromised. We can't allow our lack of discernment to throw in distortions and biases and prejudices and superstitions and mess the whole thing up. You see? That's why we like to say knowledge is structured in consciousness. As your consciousness evolves, your knowledge evolves. That's why I like to say it's not so much, your growth isn't so much about learning new facts. It's more about cultivating a more and more refined level of understanding of the facts you already know. Take an example, Lord Shiva. Okay, yeah, I know all about Lord Shiva. But it's another thing to refine your perception and your understanding and your relationship with that until you find Lord Shiva within yourself. And I imagine there are a lot of people here, oh yeah, I found Lord Shiva within myself. And my question to you is, have you? Have you really? On what level of your being? Is it an emotional thing? Or is it a transcendental thing? Everything exists on all different levels. There are representations of Lord Shiva on the physical. And a person picks up the level of Lord Shiva that their physiology is capable of perceiving. And your evolution then is about refining the physiology, refining the physiology, refining the physiology, refining the physiology, so you can pick up that same one thing, if you will, on deeper and deeper levels. And as that changes, your whole relationship with Lord Shiva changes, your whole relationship with everything changes. It's not enough to know all about. Knowing all about can be problematic. To know all about spirituality is a good beginning, all too often mistaken for the goal. To know about is very different than to become. And that's done through a refinement of the nervous system, through a cultivation of wakefulness to the depth of your own being, so that that field that underlies all existence wells up through the structured level and through all the different levels of your physiology and emerges on the surface of life undistorted. You think about this. You reflect upon it. And you cultivate discernment. And you'll do great things.